Welcome back to the End of the Internet podcast. My name is Gonzalo and I am your host, and if you have reached us, congratulations, you've reached the end of the internet. This is our 5th episode, and we decided that every episode that has a 5 contained therein, we will be doing a top 5 list, and this is our very first top 5 episode. Today we'll be talking about our top 5 favorite boss battles in video game history. We felt that this would be a good ending to this pseudo video game trilogy of podcasts that we've been doing over the past couple of weeks. We thought it was a good way to wrap up the topic and end it there and move on to other things. This was a subject that was suggested by my nephew River. I was at home for Thanksgiving and we were kind of discussing the podcast and that I wanted to do a top 5 episode because episode 5 was coming up, and he suggested this topic. He said you should do, your favorite boss battles in video games, and I thought that's a pretty good idea. So I presented it to my co-host Marcus and he was all for it. So we present to you today our top 5 lists of our favorite boss battles in video game history. We cover arcade games and console gaming. There's a moment where Marcus is describing an honorable mention and he is providing sound effects, but you cannot see the action. When you get there, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. We really want to send a huge thanks to everyone that has listened and that has liked and subscribed to the podcast. It really means a lot. Looking at the numbers and reading the comments has been inspirational. It has really kept us going. Again, we really appreciate it. We had a lot of fun recording this episode. I think you can tell we did this in a real short amount of time. We just kind of rapid fire went through them and we had a really great conversation. We had a lot of fun recording. Seemed to get it done a lot faster than I expected to, so I hope that translates over. If you guys would like, please email us. Links will be in the description. As always, thank you for listening, and without further delay, here's our discussion on our top 5 favorite boss battles in video game history. We hope you guys enjoy the show and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, so this is our 5th episode, and we decided when we were going to launch this podcast that every 5th episode we were going to do a top 5 list. Though now we've changed that to every episode with a 5 in. So 5, 15, 25. These will be top 5 lists. And in keeping with the theme of the past 2 podcasts, we figured we'd bring this little trilogy to a close and do a top 5 video game related list. The list in question will be our top 5 favorite boss battles in video game history. These are the ones that stayed with us, the ones that we thought were the most fun, the ones that we could do over and over, or were really the highlight of a given game or series. They don't have to be final bosses, they're just the boss battle that we enjoyed. It's definitely a boss, but it, again, doesn't have to be the final boss. So, Marcus, would you like to start with your list?
Okay, so normally when we do our top 5 list, we like to have, for dramatic effect, we usually start with 5. So that's exactly the order we're going to go in. So in my top 5 bosses list, number 5 is actually going to be the War Priest from the King's Fall raid in the first Destiny. That raid was awesome. I felt like it was Destiny and Bungie's, like when they started hitting their stride with their raids. But that War Priest fight is one of my absolute favorite boss battles in Destiny. So just to kind of cover real quick, Destiny is kind of pseudo RPG, MMO kind of first person hybrid thing. They had a lot of excellent ideas. They had a lot of excellent mechanics to it, but in the end, a lot of it fell short. But when they started to hit their stride as the game was, finding its footing, they started to really hit it with these things called raids, and it's basically a 6-man team, 6 people going into a big story with multiple mission points to beat a giant final boss at the end. And the whole point was to grab loot, gain, hella experience, all this cool stuff. But there was a lot of RNG, which is random number generation, which kind of screws up the thing sometimes. But anyways, War Priest, we played that a lot with our friends. We usually ran that with guys like Eric, Albert. Some people would kind of intermix. Jeff was in that too, me, Gonzalo.
This is when I was still playing Destiny.
Yeah. We'll eventually come to our Destiny podcast
there's
episode.
Gonna be an episode on Destiny. For sure.
But it was one of my all-time favorites. This big armored monster basically with this giant gun and waves of enemies that come at you, and I don't remember 100% all the mechanics. Maybe Gonzalo can kind of help me out with the mechanic part, but it was just the phases in which things got crazier and crazier were just phenomenal. It had a really badass set piece, and I think it was just the strongest boss battle I think in Destiny history for that first game for me, But
I when we were talking about this list, this character came up, the War Priest, and I really liked it. I thought it's my second favorite boss battle in Destiny. Destiny 1. I played the beta of Destiny 2. I didn't play any more of that. But I like that particular boss, the War Priest, required planning outside of the game. It required interaction with your fire team, and I really dug that. We're all friends and we were close, so it was fun to do anyway. But to make sure you had the right loadouts and the right supers and when to save them and when to pop them, and just the timing, and everybody get behind this thing, and there'd be
you had to have
certain cycles that the characters
you had to have a really good balance of patience and when to rush down.
and
really
it was
awesome.
A rhythm. And
very rhythmic.
When you got through that boss battle, it felt like you were working as one machine. It felt like a team. It's really, really satisfying to beat a raid boss in any game that has a raid, but especially in Destiny. That's what kept me going for so long, was playing the raids and playing with my friends. And the War Priest was one of the pinnacles of that mechanic. I think later on, what's his name? The Taken King.
Yeah.
I think that was a little too much. There was too much going on.
A little bit. I still love that fight, but I see where you're coming from.
It's a really good fight.
It's almost like...
But it's like...
Chapter 2 of the mechanics that you have.
This?
It does go on a little bit long.
Right, it drags just a bit. But at the end, ultimately satisfying, although I think the War Priest was pretty damn good. A lot of fun. So I agree with your choice.
There was just too many times where we would... I've always thought that a good raid has that moment where right before you basically start that next section, you and your team are just standing there for like the next 10 minutes strategizing. You have one guy you always have that one guy in your raid who has done it more than once and kind of knows what's going on, or really knows what's going on. And
there's usually at least one person that has beat it.
Yeah.
And they're the experience.
Yeah. So, and they're guiding the rest. And there's always a scale. You have the one guy who's beaten it.
There's like the veteran that goes all the way down to the rookie.
Exactly. And then you have all the way at the other end of the spectrum, the guy who's just never done this raid before, which was usually me. It's like, okay, so what do I have to do? And I always tried to play more of a tank role, because I always played a Titan character, and Titans were supposed to be kind of like the tanks.
They're kind of like tanks, yeah.
So that's exactly what I would want to play as. It's like, just tell me where to shoot. Don't ask me to do a mechanic unless I absolutely have to, which sometimes in the raids there were absolutes. Like, no, you have to do this.
Stand in this circle of light, or stand behind this pillar.
Yeah, hold this thing.
Yeah.
Hold it down so this gateway opens so we can go through, or grab this sword. There's always something like that. But when I felt I was at my best is when it was like, start shooting! Like, oh, I got you.
Yeah.
I will throw everything I got at it. But yeah, War Priest was definitely one of my favorites. And I don't think I had as much fun. Like, the other bosses in them, especially with the Taken King himself, and I think it was like Golgoroth, or I can't remember the big
Golgoroth?
something like Golgoroth, or some
like
shit
that.
like that. I don't know. You guys, you can comment in the.
This used to be fucking knowledge for us for a while. Like, we knew all these characters' names and all the guns' names and
what to use, what not to use. Like, no, don't use that, or you know,
it's just kind of like slipped away from us, and now it's like
it really has.
We had to look up War Priest,
Yeah, I was like, what's that big armored guy?
I had to ask you who Atheon was.
Yeah,
like,
I didn't know that one. Thank God. I was like, yeah, I know Atheon. He would have made my honorable list, but we'll get more into that in a little bit. But yeah, War Priest number 5 for me.
Okay, my number 5 will be the final boss character in the first Versus crossover Capcom fighting game, X-Men vs. Street Fighter. At the very end of the game, you fight Apocalypse, and he, laughs his laugh, and he's about your size, maybe a little bit bigger, but then he transforms into this massive monster. And one of my absolute favorite boss. This is something that kept happening in the Versus series with Onslaught and Galactus, but
that big red thing in 3
or 2. Abyss.
Yeah,
and MVC2. But it's just a long history of big, huge heads that stand there and get their asses kicked. And I really like it. It's like beating this game through the computer or whatever. It was fun. There was, ups and downs and, whatever the difficulty may be at. But at the end, it was like you got this celebration. You got to, like, just go nuts. This is what this game is. This is the spectacle. And you're not going to lose. If you have a bit of competence. I lost to Apocalypse before. I've lost to Onslaught. I've never lost to Abyss.
Anyone you lost to Abyss, I feel bad for you.
Yeah, Abyss is kind of hard to lose to. I mean, he's meant to lose. But Apocalypse was the first that kind of just like, hey, here's a big fucking head, hit it. Here's a big giant arm. And it was exciting. I didn't really see anything like that since Children of the Atom came out. Magneto was kind of a bigger character, but when you first fight Juggernaut, who is a boss in that game, he's massive, and you're like, holy
he's like
shit.
3 times your size.
Yeah, he's like 3 times the biggest character in that game. So when you see Apocalypse, that really ups the scale. And I was a big comic sweaty. At that time, nothing meant more to me than X-Men. And so fighting Apocalypse felt really good. Just jumping into the air and doing like a super Hadouken right in his head was really, really sweet.
And that little sprite with his head just kind of turned, wincing his face, and he's just vibrating and kind of blinking. Like, that was the shit. It was
so much fun. I really enjoyed that. It felt like spectacle. It felt like comic books. And like I said, it kind of felt like a victory lap at the end of that game. It was kind of, here's the culmination of this big, ridiculous game we made for you guys. Have fun.
Beat the shit out. And see, I always hated that fight because I was a big Apocalypse nerd.
Oh, yeah.
So when I got that, I was like, when you see Apocalypse and when the rounds are going to begin and he's your size, you're like, oh shit, it's going to be a proper fight. You're ready to go. And then he grows so huge. And I was like, oh my God, he's so amazingly big. And then he has like 3 moves and you just beat the shit out of him. You're like, is this what you did to my dude? Like, that, it always bothered me with Apocalypse. Like, with Onslaught, it actually was cool. I love the Onslaught fight. And actually, I think I got my ass whipped a couple times by Onslaught.
The cool thing about Onslaught is that it starts off, he has 2 forms.
Yeah.
Right? So there's the regular form.
And then the one with like a little skull and his teeth and shit. Yeah. But the Apocalypse one, like, I never really, I think maybe he beat me once or twice, but even on hardest difficulty, it was never really that hard. Maybe cheap every once in a while, but I was always depressed about that. I was like, why did you do that to my boy?
I think I heard a rumor that was kind of like, there is no spoon. And a long time ago when I was a kid, someone told me that you can adjust the difficulty for any fighting game, but the final boss is never adjusted. It's always one difficulty.
Oh, really?
And so that just always stayed in my head. So I just always feel like I'm fighting a boss at whatever difficulty is the hardest. And, so he never really scares me because I just expect him to be super hard. You know what I mean? So
I
don't know if that's true.
I wonder if that's true. That's an interesting... Okay.
If I made a fighting game, that's how I do it. It's like, it's always on 8 for the boss.
Yeah.
And that was definitely true for like...
Playing on 1 star. Nope, it's on 8.
For like Samurai Showdown
I don't know if you told me, or maybe I heard it somewhere, but I always thought when you started, like, let's take something as simple as like Street Fighter, and you started off on 1 star. It started off on 1 star, but when you got to a midway point, it would go up a star. So by the time you got to the boss, it was technically on medium.
Not that I know of.
No? Well, I could have sworn I heard that somewhere. Yeah. If anyone knows that, because we're
for sure, like in the arcade, you can feel it. Like when you play the arcade, the first 2, you could beat with your eyes closed in 1 button.
Yeah.
And then it just...
all of a sudden, it's like, now we're playing a game.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's a thing or not. I'll have to look that up.
Another thing I liked about the Versus final bosses, Apocalypse being my favorite, is that they were always like a deep, sweaty villain. Like who the fuck thinks to use Onslaught? You have to know comics lore for that to even make sense. Like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
Galactus in UMVC 3, like, that was great. We were all waiting for Galactus to be the final boss, and he finally was, and that was a lot of fun.
That was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really, like, I liked a lot of Galactus's attacks, like that one where he shoots beams from his fingertips and his eyes, and he just like takes up the whole screen and uses a character.
Yeah, that one's freaking sweet.
That's so cool.
I also liked how, like, after you hurt him for a certain point, he would send out like Silver Surfer versions of villains.
Like
so it was like Wesker and Dormammu and shit. You're like, oh shit! You just beat the living shit out of one while the other one's like waiting. You're like,
And they always had really like cool lines that were these like awesome one-liners, But I think my favorite was Onslaught. It was like, "Behold my mighty hand." That was really cool. But so that was my number 5. Now you're number 4.
So number 4, when we were talking about our list, I was kind of going back and forth, and I was thinking, you can kind of tell from 4 on out, it was more of like younger memories, not necessarily childhood, but a lot of childhood memories. But number 4, my favorite battle ever, music, what was at stake, everything, TMNT 2 on the NES, the Shredder fight. Not the arcade, on the arcade system. No, I want it on the console. I want 2 buttons, and I want that really shitty sprite. You know, that is my all-time favorite. So, little story time, people. So me and my brother, Mike, he's 7 years older than I am. He always used to take me under his wing with certain games. Other games he just beat the shit out of me or torture me with. But in other games he would like, you know, hey, play this game with me. Let's try to beat it. And one of those games was TMNT 2, the arcade port, you know, for the NES. And for years we would try to get to Shredder, and for years we actually didn't get to Shredder. Krang would always finish us off, and we would never have lives, and we would be done. It was very frustrating. So fast forward years, my brother's in college. I don't even know where my NES is anymore. He comes home and he shows me that he bought one of the new, like the mini NESs. Remember the ones, the top loader?
Yeah, top loader.
He bought one. I was like, oh, that's badass. We dusted it off. We put it in. We played it, and we played Star Fox first, I think, or not Star Fox.
Say Star Fox.
Not Star Fox. I forgot what we played first. It doesn't matter. But anyways, we busted out TMNT. It's like, let's do this. And we had this look on each other's face like, we're going to fucking beat this today. And we played it, and I'll never forget when we got to Krang, I looked at both of our lives, and I was like, do you have 4 lives? Because I have 4 lives. We hadn't died. We were just getting fucking our shit. And we were like, oh my god. So we fought Krang, and he took 2 of our lives. Like, it was like, oh shit. So we're like, we still got 2. We're good. And we're going. We're fucking fighting. We kill Krang. Like, bam, move, badass. And Shredder comes out. We're fighting Shredder. And lo and behold, this motherfucker hits us with the electricity, turns us little turtles, kills us both. So we both have 1 life. Like, oh shit. So we have to be perfect now. So we were almost perfect. He wasn't hitting us anymore. We just kept jumping and hitting, jumping and kicking, jumping and kicking, getting away, you know, inching out. And I'll never forget, my brother died, and I had 1 block of life left. And I think I had 1 life left, and he had 0. I don't remember the scenario, but all I remember is go, Mike, take my life! Because in that game, when you died and it was game over for you, you could steal one of the 1-ups from your buddy. And I told Mike, I go, fucking take my life. Like, take it. And he did. And me and him were on the screen. And we both fucking did a little double hit. And we killed Shredder. And fucking, it was one of my fucking greatest memories ever. We finally had beat him after years of that game tormenting us. But now, every time, like, I'll be at work. And if I'm pacing, like, oh, I got to get this done, I have Shredder music in my head. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, it's like, oh, I got to go. So that's number 4, Shredder, TMNT 2. Tecmodrome was the best, like the whole thing, all that build up, the Rock Soldiers, like the whole thing.
I taught myself to love that extra level in the NES port, the snow level.
It's the best!
Because that's where my run would usually end when I was a kid, when I had it. Didn't get to that wolf. He was like a wolf in a jean jacket.
Yeah,
like a leather
yeah.
jacket or something.
Or a polar bear or something. He's
something.
something.
He was a wolf.
I think he's a wolf too. I just remember his fat nose.
He was someone I played all the time. That was kind of like my run killer. It was there, you know, until later on I played with cousins or whatever. But I remember that level a lot.
Yeah, I think our run killer was the other level. I don't think it was in the arcade. The Shadow Dojo. I don't think that was in the arcade, but I don't remember.
I can't remember.
Where the tigers would come out of the walls.
Yeah.
That was actually a run killer. The stupid tigers that would come out of the walls were a run killer. And then, of course, that final boss, like Samurai Do, where his head would spin around and hit you.
I don't remember that.
Dude.
Maybe, was that game?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I have horrible memories of that fucking boss because he was so hard. It was, the boss before was the blue rock soldier with the long nose. And you would go into the bottom and you would go to the Shadow Dojo. And it was another level that wasn't in the arcade. And there were, I mean, that shit was hard.
No, I remember the level. I'm just saying I don't remember being in that game.
Yeah, and then he had a big spear. And
yeah. No, I remember. I'm saying I don't remember it being in that game.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that was that one. But yes, so that's number 4. What about you?
Okay, for me, my number 4 is going back to Destiny. The first raid boss, Atheon, in the Volta Glass. That was the first raid that I had actively participated in. I was super sweaty about Destiny at this time, and we had our fire team. Again, it was the same squad that we had mentioned earlier, and this was when I was getting closer to them as well. Like, I was getting to know Albert better. I was getting to know Eric a lot better. And for a while, it was just like me and Eric on Destiny kind of fucking around and wanting to like keep playing, being in love with the promise of that game and not the game itself. So we spent a lot of time raiding Vault of Glass, and though I do have like what were they called, the little shimmering lights?
Oh, the oracles?
Yeah. I fucking hate fighting the oracles. It's my least favorite activity in Destiny. Yeah. Probably bar none.
Yeah, the oracles.
But yeah. But the actual final boss battle with Atheon, it felt like everybody was an active participant. It felt like everybody had a role to play, and there was also the kind of like random factor of who would get, shot through time and the different portals opening and getting the shield and all that other shit. So we all kind of had to understand how the whole thing worked, and we kind of relied a little bit too much, I think, sometimes on Eric and Albert with the shield. I think we kind of like, you guys grab it.
Yeah,
You're
you
much
guys,
better at it.
you guys fucking do it.
But I like that all of us kind of understood the mechanics, and we all had to have some kind of grasp of every aspect of that fight, and getting there together was part of the bonding experience.
Yeah, I feel like that one was the heaviest on like a journey. Like that one felt like you were going into the depths and you were going to experience. Like all the other ones were just like, they felt like stages. Yeah. Like, okay, this next stage you're gonna kill.
This felt like
fucking
hound. This felt like something else.
Yeah.
We were exhausted by the end of it. Like, our spirits were so high. We were such young kids.
We were
and by the
young
end of
guardians.
we were like had just like post-traumatic stress. We were exhausted.
Like,
we were tired.
hatred for the game and for each other.
Yeah, we're
like...
kind of shitty with each other. And I remember, I would say a good 70% of the time we finished that raid or finished playing for the night, I had a headache. I had a massive headache.
You did, yeah. You would be mentally drained.
I was just like so wiped out.
I would be quiet. Because there would always be there's always that moment in that raid, or in a lot of raids, but especially that raid, where everyone just got quiet, and you're just like...
Because our souls were crushed.
Yeah, and you're like, uh-oh. Like, I feel tension building, and like someone would say something, and it's like, where's my help? It's like, uh-oh. Yeah. It's like, this shit's about to get really salty real quick.
Yeah, and when you first see Atheon, he was kind of the first really big, gigantic boss that you fought, and he, like, when the game came out, the raid wasn't available for, I think, for the first couple of weeks or something like that. So it was something to look forward to and plan for, and when you got to him, it didn't disappoint. To me, it didn't disappoint.
I agree.
And every raid since has been a reworking of that first raid, I think. They're all pretty good. I mean, I haven't played the raids in Destiny 2, like I said, but every raid after that were pretty good.
It's okay.
Is it?
It's. I mean, they're not bad, but it's nowhere near as good as the first Destinies. And I don't know if that's just nostalgia talking, or salt of what has happened to Destiny 2. But
I don't know. I think it was pretty understood that the raids were pretty damn good in Destiny, and I never heard that kind of praise for the. Even like, what was it, Wrath of the Machine?
A lot of people
that was that was a really good raid.
I actually never got to play it, unfortunately. By that time,
I played it by myself a couple of times. Like, I started, you can't beat it.
Yeah,
I was just like by myself running around. I was like,
I don't know why, it was just kind of weird. Like, I guess because it's gonna sound so stupid, but I couldn't get into the idea of Wrath of the Machine or whatever, because it was like, where does this fit in the lore? Like, Crota, God, Taken King, that all makes sense to me. Atheon's like, I've never heard of you, bro. You know what I mean? Like,
it definitely felt like a side story,
forced in. You know.
But it was also kind of like day in the life of the Guardian. Like, you got to go do this now.
Yeah. It didn't feel.
So this isn't like, we're not saving the light. It's like, no, but this is also happening. Can you guys go do that?
Well, there's a corruption and there's red shits everywhere. It's like, no, I know, but we can take care of that.
The worst lines in Destiny's history is in that.
Yeah, seriously.
I can't get into Iron.
Again, we're gonna have a Destiny episode where we're going to love and shit all over this game. Yes. So stay tuned for that, everybody.
But Atheon was my favorite boss from that game, and is my fourth favorite boss of all time. So
nice.
You're number 3.
All right, so number 3, I'm getting a little older now, and in my youth, would have to be on the N64, Star Fox 64, but not the fight with Andros, and none of the other boss fights before then. The fight that I would like to discuss for my number 3 is the final battle you have with Starwolf. If you did everything right, and you fight this dude, you're going to get the hardest version of him, and the fight with Starwolf is by far one of the most sweatiest moments I remember having, because I was so like, my thumbs would hurt at the end, because if you're not spinning your ass off and fucking doing loop-to-loops and fucking getting out of there, that dude will rip you up. And it's him and his squad versus you and your squad. And when I first played it, he beat the shit out of me. And I thought I was really good at Star Fox, and he beat the fuck out of me. But at some point, I don't remember when, maybe a couple of weeks into it, when I finally started to really master Star Fox and I was getting so into it, not only did I always go and fight Star Wolf at his hardest, but I would actually shoot my guys down. Falco, Slippy, Peppy, all of them. I shoot them down so I could fight his squad full life, one versus 4.
1v4.
Oh my god, and that was my favorite. And I think when I started doing that, I was like, oh yeah. Yeah, this is good. Like, I just get rid of my team. Get the fuck out of here, guys. I got this. And that shit was hard. Like, that was probably the most intense time I ever got into, like, boss fighting. You know, it was like, no, I want each. And then I started getting to a point where I would actually pick them off in a specific order. I would do the chameleon first. It's like, get the fuck out of here. I would always leave. I can't remember the other guy, but there was I think his name was Sigma or something. It was a pig, and he was the one who betrayed your dad. Oh, okay. So I killed him second because it had to end with me and Star Wolf. And it's like, no. You're supposedly the best in the galaxy. I'm the best in the galaxy. Even though I should have killed...
I'm Star Fox, you're Star Wolf.
Yeah, it's like, let's do this. But even, and then going to the boss fight with Andros at the end, that was great. But no, that Star Wolf battle in N64, with the hardest lane. This fucking one of my favorites. I played the shit out of that. It's so good.
I think the Star Fox series has a lot of good boss battles. My favorite being the Andros fight at the end of the first one. It was really, really good.
It was cool. Music was badass. It was great. It was the first thing. It was. I had never seen anything like that before, so it was like, oh shit, you try to suck you in, and you're like hitting the brakes, and then boosting. Like there was a lot of badass parts of that.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me that story about Star Fox 64, and that sounded really exciting. You know, I was like, I wish I had been a Star Fox 64 fan. I wish I was a 64 fan.
Yeah,
like
I wish we would have been. It's like, dude, come over and
check
this shit out.
Yeah, I would have probably freaked out about as much. You know what I mean? Like, just hearing about that sounds really cool and really fun.
And
I'm
range
like that.
mode.
Like, I'm like very, like into lore. Like you probably would have done the same. Like, oh, shoot these guys down first, and then I want to get to the final boss or whatever.
Yeah, because I think it was the chameleon who was just one of the hitmen, and I think it was one of the Andros's nephew. I think it was like a baboon or a monkey, and then it was the pig, and then it was Star Wolf. And I was like, no, me and you are the end. Me and you.
I remember one of my absolute favorite memories playing video games was I think the last time I played Star Fox to completion, and I went through the route with Macbeth and all that.
My favorite.
Slippy and Peppy had both died, and so by the end of the game, like it does it in like a pattern of sequence, like Fox speaks first, then Peppy, then Slippy, and then Falco.
Oh yeah,
and Peppy and Slippy had died, and so at the end of it, I was like exhausted, and I was tired. It's like playing for a couple hours, and so you just fly off, and it's Fox's voice, and this long, like sullen pause. It's just like this mournful quiet. And then you hear Falco. It's like the two fucking warriors made it out of there, Like the two green guys, the two that were too green, wet behind the ears, they didn't make it.
Yeah.
But the old veteran and the best, they flew out there together. And then the camera pans around, it's just the fucking two of them.
Yeah.
Like, kind of sad. It's like, my crew didn't make it all back.
I had the same kind of moment in Star Fox 64, because if you completed the game with all your pilots, they do kind of the same thing. So at the end of it, because just a quick thing, at the end of Star Fox 64... when you beat it on the hardest level, I think in general it happens, but I always beat on the hardest level. Not to sound like an asshole, but I always beat on I always beat on the hardest level. But it was cool because after you destroyed Andros, you were kind of lost in the fires, and then you hear this voice come on, and it's your dad. It's like his spirit, and it's like, follow me, son. So you actually have to follow him out. He's guiding you out because everything's going to shit. You can't really tell where to go, even though I memorized the pattern, so I actually would boost ahead of him. But he would lead you out, so when you would finally blow out and the music was hitting, bells, ding, 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 all this badass shit, you would go up to the air, and the Great Fox was next to you, and each one of the characters say something to you. It's like, you're just like your father, Fox. It's like, I thought you were a goner, all this stuff. And Falco was like, you're one hell of a pilot, all this cool shit. But Fox looks at them all. So when I would do it, when I would shoot them all down and fight Starwolf and go kill Andros, when I would come out after my dad saves my life, I would go into the air and I'd be next to the Great Fox and no one would be talking and I would just be looking. It would be cool because it was looking like Fox was looking up at nothing. You know, it's like they're all gone, even though they clearly show that they weren't dead. But to me, they were dead. Like, get out of here. But yeah, that was fucking awesome. I love that. Okay, so number 3. Gonzalo.
Okay. So my number 3 is from Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
So we've been on for a little while about. And it's at the very beginning of the game. The game starts basically at the end of Rondo of Blood. And it's like, I don't know, awkwardly titled Bloodlines, which was the name of the Genesis game. But the last game before Symphony of the Night was Rondo of Blood. So you're starting off as Richter. And you're climbing to the top of Dracula's castle. And you get there and you basically just play the last boss, right? You just play that little bit to get the story going, which I thought was a lot of fun. I had never used Richter before, but it felt familiar because it was a Belmont, and he's super overpowered, you know. And there are like Richter runs that you can play as Richter in that game, and blah blah. He has things called item crashes, which you can use like holy water and throw it on the ground, or he can do a hydro storm for X amount of hearts. So you can beat that really quickly. But the cool thing when I first played it, I played through it just fighting him, trying to, you know, beat him the best way I knew how. And I loved, you know, it's an iconic speech at the beginning when Richter talks to Dracula, and he does "What is a man?" The "What is a man?" speech comes from that beginning scene in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's perfect. Go find it. People listening to this probably know it. We've memorized it. It's perfect. It's overacted. It sounds so great.
And the American version is awful. Like, it is awful. Have you heard it? Mm-mm. Oh my god.
The American version?
Yeah, or what? There's a remixed version of it.
Oh,
like,
really?
I don't know. I think it's in an American translation or whatever. It's fucking awful. Like, they changed some of this. It's nowhere near. Like, yeah, there is. I was watching a speed run on it, and there were like some ROM, and it was this different. I was like, what the hell? And I looked it up, and apparently there's like a second recording of it.
Oh, okay.
And it is awful. Yeah.
Kind of the
worst thing ever.
I think it's Silent Hill 2. They like re-recorded a lot of the voice actors in it on the PC or the re-release or the remaster or something.
Oh yeah.
Fucking dumb. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Anyway, so you fight Dracula, and he, you know, does a lot of magical attacks. He laughs at you and, you know, casts spells, whatever. You eventually beat him, and then he turns into like his true form, or one of his true forms, and you continue to fight him. But if for some reason Dracula is to kill you, little Maria, when she's a little kid, comes out and she shouts at Richter to gather his strength, and she like
gather your strength.
Yeah, imbues him with the power of all of her spirit animals and shit like that. You know, it's just all this magic. He gets super powered up, and then he's a god, and you cannot lose.
Yeah,
you know, it's the start of the game. But the better you do in that fight, the better Alucard stat will be at the beginning of the game.
I had heard of that years later.
I love that this particular boss encounter, which you can't lose, does affect how you play the game. Yeah. I really, really dig that. And it's very dramatic. The music is dramatic. The art is great. The gameplay is solid. And when you're about to lose, and when Maria comes out and, you know, powers you up, it's really intense. And that's what happened to me the first time, because I almost died.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, when I saw it, and I thought that was supposed to happen. So then after a while, I was like, "Well, I'm supposed to die."
It does feel scripted. And then when I would do it, and I found out, you know, the better you do, the better your stats. I tried to do it without Maria, but then I hated it. Like, I didn't like not having her come out
because it felt more dramatic.
Yes, it feels like a final boss battle at the beginning of a fucking game. Like, that's how I knew that game was. I made the right choice when I bought it. You know, it's like that was a fantastic. But so Dracula at the beginning of Symphony of the Night with Richter. That's my number 3.
I definitely wanted somewhere to put that on my list. I just couldn't. But yes, like that whole beginning, the quotes. Like, for the longest time, me and a buddy of mine, this guy named Michael T, we would quote that to each other. That beginning part. That shit's so good. Like, it's just so good. I love that. So that's a fantastic, fantastic number 3. So it begs the question: what beat your number 3?
We'll find out.
We'll find out. Stay tuned. Yeah,
Marcus, what is your number 3?
I was gonna go a quick word for a commercial break. So number 2 comes from one of my all-time favorite games, Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time. There are a lot of awesome boss battles in that game, but I have to, like, I almost feel like my Legend of Zelda fan card should be taken away. I have to put in the fight between Link and Ganon at the very end, Ganon/Ganondorf, or technically reverse those Ganondorf to Ganon. The whole thing from the very beginning, when you fight him in the cathedral, when he destroys the floor underneath you, when he's hurling the energy balls at you and you're hitting them back with your sword, all of that up until, well, let me take a step back. So all of that, right? You know, if you've played the game, and I know a lot of you who are listening probably have, they know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you hadn't, you know, we've been building up. Ganon is this big piece of shit. Like, he wants the Triforce, he wants all three pieces, and he's so close. He has Zelda. He has one of the pieces. You know, he needs you now. This is the epic battle. Awesome, like cathedral-like music playing. And when the boss battle starts, you know, you don't really know what to expect. Even though you technically have fought a version of Ganon before, once you see him hurl the energy ball, you're like, oh shit, I know exactly what to do because I fought Phantom Ganon. Like, it kind of gave you, Nintendo and their brilliant game design was like, we're gonna kind of teach you how to fight him, but then we're gonna change it up on you, so like it doesn't make it feel cheap. You know, you won't get a cheap hit against you. So, you know, you do that back and forth, and when you finally strike him and he's like bleeding from his mouth, which was so cool. It was like, oh my god, I see blood. When everything kind of goes to shit and the castle is being destroyed, you know, because you thought you beat him and you have to run out of the castle, I was like, cool, this is awesome. Like, let's get out of this castle. And you get to this area, and, you know, you have to fight a couple of like little mini bosses because they're trying to slow you down. But you get to this area and you realize it's not over, because you're kind of looking at, it's like, this is a decent area for a boss battle. Son of a bitch. And like,
nice place you got here.
Yeah.
Lots of space.
Lots of space. The only other tell could have been is like, what is all this potions here? You know what I mean? But so you get to this part and there's a noise and Zelda's like, you know, what was that? And you have to go check it out, and it gives you control back on the screen. You're like, oh shit, here we go. Well, anyways, Ganondorf has turned into this ginormous fucking monster, Ganon. And from, again, you're gonna hear me say this a lot, from the music that hits, the lightning striking in the background, way he looks when he's growing and his swords are growing with him, and he just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that his like scream, his demonic yell, you know, and he knocks the Master Sword out of your hand. That shit gave me chills. Like, I was so fucking ready. And then I never got the long sword that you were supposed to go get fixed by one of the rock-eating motherfuckers. I never got that, so I was like, I don't know how to fight this dude. I don't have a sword. I was like, I have a hammer. And I fucking hammered the shit out of him. Roll under him, hammer, light arrows. It was fucking great. But that entire scenario was badass. And then, of course, the build up to, like, when the final strike needs to be hit and fucking Zelda uses her last bit of power to kind of pin him, and you have to go get the Master Sword, and you know what's about to happen. So I fucking run, get the Master Sword, come back, and you give him a 1-2, and then you stab him through his mouth. I was not expecting that. I was not. It was so, oh my god, it was so good. And the rest of that game, the ending and how everything plays out, it was the first game ever to make me a little teary-eyed. But that boss battle, I will never forget it. And if I could have that as a ringtone, like his yell and how he knocks the Master Sword out, which I probably could make myself, but I'm just too lazy, I would have that as a ringtone, because that shit, it will always give me chills. I would literally play Ocarina from beginning again, all the way just to get that. I didn't need to, even though you're already beating the game, I was like, I just want to fight him. If there was a way I could save state it and just fight him, I would do that. But that is number 2 all-time favorite boss battles for me. Yes.
Nice. All right, my number 2 will probably lead into your number 1. But
Yeah.
So my number 2 is the boss battle with Psycho Mantis in Metal Gear Solid, the first MGS for the PlayStation.
Fantastic boss battle, by the way.
I remember getting that game and playing it nonstop. It was one that I started to obsess over. I would play it in the morning before school. I'd play it as soon as I got home. It was the reason to finish homework at school. It was the reason to get up in the morning earlier than you're supposed to. You know, like, was to play that fucking game. And getting that boss, or that game is full of great boss battles. I don't think there's a weak one in the fucking bunch. I think it's a
and it's so funny because like the weakest boss battle I would even say, which is again not even a derogatory, it's not even a weak, it's just out of all of them would probably be the first time you fight Revolver Onslaught in that little room. Like, but it's a fantastic fight. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's like all of your boss battles.
Like the first Vulcan Raven or the one that's in the tank that you have to plant the claymore. But like in any other game, that's the best boss battle. But in MGS, that's the worst boss battle.
Yeah, that's just one of them.
Yeah. So fighting Psycho Mantis, I thought that the team that Liquid Snake was leading was really cool. I'm always a fan of like a group of X, Y, and Z. They all have a specific skill or a talent, and this team, like Vulcan Raven, Revolver Ocelot, Psycho Mantis, Sniper Wolf, all of them had a thing, you know. And Psycho Mantis was the most sinister looking, and I didn't really understand how he fit. Like, what was he doing, and what was his shtick, I guess. Yeah. And I really dug that whole game is just kind of a masterpiece. How he'll read your memory card, and I had been playing Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and Psycho Mantis, you know, like, now I'm going to read your mind, and you take control of your controller. But he says, you like Castlevania, don't you? And I was like, Psycho Mantis is reading my mind. You know, I was freaking out, and I got super sweaty about it. I really, really enjoyed it. And it wasn't until... So I played the game the first time, and it took me something like 35 to 40 minutes to beat him. And I just could not land a shot, but for once every 5 minutes or something, running around the room.
Yeah.
And, you know, sending, you know, furniture at you, whatever. And I was just like, man, that was crazy and epic and long, and I'm exhausted, and I beat him, and I'm gonna save it, and fuck this guy, and I did it, you know.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later that
you
I
did
found
it the
out.
fucking like OG
yeah,
way.
I did it. Yeah. So you're supposed to, if you talk to Campbell or if you read a magazine, you'll find out that you can switch your controller port from 1 to 2, and that'll break, quote unquote, Psycho Mantis' link to your mind, and he can't read your moves, which is not reading your inputs.
Yeah.
And so I ended up killing Psycho Mantis without that, which is why it took me 40 minutes. But I just loved that much interactivity with a boss, and one that I was looking forward to. Like, it lived up to and surpassed the hype for me. Like, what I thought that boss battle was going to be, it was so much more fun.
Yeah.
You know? And like I said, every boss battle in that game I thoroughly enjoyed, but Psycho Mantis stands above them all in my head.
That's absolutely awesome.
And because it felt like I went through something.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
when I played that fight, I think Eli was the one who told me. I think he heard something about it, or maybe read somewhere. I know someone told me, it was like, now put the controller in 2. I was like, what? That's stupid. And then I did it, and it worked. I was like, what the hell? And they explained it to me the same way. It's like, you broke his mental control on you. I was like, I never got to fight him that way, you know, just this real grindy way. I did the controller thing. And I thought that was so badass. And it was so funny because like years later, I had played it, the Twin Snakes, the kind of the first HD remix of it on the GameCube, and I fucking loved it because they even had it in first person, which was so fucking cool. But it didn't click to me. I forgot about Psycho Mantis reading your memory card, and he was like, I see you like playing Mario Sunshine. I was like, hey bro, shh, keep it down, man. Like, for trying to play some Metal Gear. Yeah, it's like. It was like, bro, like, why are you fucking putting me on blast? But that freaked me out because I was like, oh my god, I forgot he did that. And I was like, does the controller thing still work? And I did it, and it does. I was like, oh my god, damn it, it's still badass. But yeah, that was phenomenal. I love that. I absolutely love that.
I'm a fan of any creators that take advantage of every, I guess, what's the right word? Of every little thing an art form can provide. Mm-hmm. They utilize every inch of it. And Hideo Kojima and that team, every single thing you could think of, like, how could we make the DualShock vibration help? Yeah. You know, like, put it against your arm when you're trying to like heal yourself, and it like gives you a massage or whatever. Yeah. Like, they used everything that system had to offer and what they could do with a video game and how it could be applied to a player and the experience. It was crazy at the time.
What was the one? Was it on like Snake Eater, where you would like reset the time clock and make it like you would reset the internal clock of the PlayStation by like 2 or 3 weeks if you were fighting one of the snipers who was like fucking god tier, and he would die of old age. No,
like, you just have to like not come back. If you stop and save the game and then you don't play it for 2 days and you come back and you load it up,
is that what it? Okay,
he'll be dead.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Like,
he just like dies of old age.
Sneaky fucks, man. Yeah, like, that shit is good shit right there.
Yeah, I think Psycho Mantis was like the best version of those boss battles.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like I said, I really dug the character design. I like the voice actor. It really kind of like, it added this really creepy factor to a game that was mostly tactical espionage, and that was really cool too. It's like when you first go into that hall where the ninja is, where Gray Fox is.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit! It almost kind of like it's like a horror movie.
Yeah, you get a little Resident Evil hint because there's like blood on the wall, and
bodies all over the hall,
decapitated dude, and you're like, I remember that. I remember going to the door, and it's like, I don't want to go through this door.
Yeah. Like, what am I gonna see?
Yeah, it's like, no, I don't know what did this. Like, no, I'm okay. I'm gonna go ahead and pause the game here. I'm good. I'm done.
Yeah, but I think that game, like every tool that a video game could utilize, that game utilized it, and I think it was awesome. It was full of humor, and it was a lot of silly in a game that was very serious.
I like the catch up thing.
I was just thinking,
you do the catch up, and if you didn't do it right, the guy's, what are you doing?
Yeah,
like,
he's all pissed off. He's just like, what the? Get up!
Get up!
That
like,
really great. That game is a masterpiece.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was my number 2. So, what is your number 1?
So, number 1 with the drum roll. Going, like you said, the perfect segue. My number 1 goes back to Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation. And it's the final battle between Snake and Liquid, fighting Metal Gear Rex. And then having to fight Liquid on top of Metal Gear Rex. Everything building up to that was so cool. Like, even the fight while you were fighting Metal Gear Rex, when Gray Fox like gives himself up to kind of, I think he takes out one of the big cannons or something to help you so you can fight it better.
Smashing each other.
Yeah, and he gets smashed. I love that. He has this one of my all-time favorite lines, and I'm sure it's a pre-existing line, but he was like, "There's nothing more dangerous than a cornered jackal," or something like that. A wounded jackal, I think is what it was, because he was being killed. And it was like, oh shit, and he kills himself, and you destroy it.
He also had a different identity too, right? He was like a cornered fox or whatever, because he was known as Gray Fox.
Something like that. Oh yeah, that's what I meant. I screwed that up. Sorry, internet, shut up. Now, a cornered fox or something like that. But yeah, so you do that, and you destroy Metal Gear Rex, and you think it's over. Well, I mean, I thought it was over. I guess I was fucking just hoping it was over, because I was like, oh, this is so awesome. Because that fight I thought was pretty tough. That Metal Gear Rex fight was pretty tough.
It is. I would be very surprised if people that didn't read a publication honestly thought that fight was going to keep going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think everybody thought it was over.
Yeah. So then you fight Liquid on top of it in a fist fight. I was like, that's so badass. And you wind up knocking him off. And it's like, okay, we got to get out of here. So then again, going back to the whole timer thing, like, let's get out of here. It goes back to him chasing you down in another Humvee, taking shots at you, or like with the car and trying to rear you off, and all of that. It was just, again, going back to the masterpiece that is MGS on the PlayStation. It just felt like something I had never done before. It was like a movie again, and I don't remember if there were games like that before Metal Gear. Like, I don't even know if there were. Because
I'm hard pressed to think of a game that was like, I know that even Metal Gear wasn't as good as Metal Gear before MGS.
Yeah, of course. But it just makes me think about, like, when you play games like Uncharted, God of War, these games that have these grand set pieces, Last of Us, and you're thinking about how they are now, and it's almost an expectation. Like, well, I expect this game to be beautiful. I expect this game to pull at my heartstrings and stuff like that. I almost feel like you have to go, well, MGS paved that way, because that's exactly how it felt. The stuff with Meryl, the way you interacted with the characters in the intercoms and stuff, and then of course that final boss fight leading up to the grand finale where he gets fucking pieced out by the fox die and shit. It has to be my number 1, because it still to this day just makes me just like, oh my god, it's so good. It's and I'm not even an MGS head. I'm not a Metal Gear guy. Like, Metal Gear Solid was the first one I played back to back. Like, I played it, beat it, and then I think you get, depending on what you did, you get like the bandana.
Yeah,
or
like who you saved, Meryl or Otacon?
I saved Meryl. And I played it again, and I think I switched it so I could do. I played it 3 times, because then I saved Otacon. And I played that one 3 times. I didn't really care too much about MGS2. And then I played. I was like, "Oh, this is badass," but I didn't buy it. And then I found out that you don't get to play with Snake through the whole game. And then I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad I didn't buy that shit." I was so mad, even though I hear it's a great game. Like, I hear it's good, but
I think most people are pretty still upset. They have the better taste in their mouths.
Yeah, I think so.
And then, I didn't want to play as Red. I wanted to play as Snake.
And I think I was working at Game Crazy when Snake Eater was out. And I remember hearing a lot about it. It's like, oh, you got to feed yourself and banish stuff up. I was like, as cool as that sounds, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's what kept me from playing that game, is that, like, that sounds, that's par for the course for this fucking series, But I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And now I'm over here playing Red Dead, and I'm like, oh, I got bit by a rattlesnake. I gotta get cure. I gotta take care of myself.
That's almost like, that's like video games. So, I've been poisoned in Final Fantasy games, and you have to go and cure it, or you have to use antidote. You know what I mean?
Well, but it's like I have to cook some food to eat because I'm because like you can
take the medicine on an empty stomach. Right?
Yeah, you can't be like malnourished. It's like you're underweight. And I'm like, oh, I got to eat more. You know what I mean? Like it's stuff like that. Which now I'm like, oh, I'm very cool about it. That's awesome.
Again, did it. MGS starting it,
and MGS starting that.
Yeah, the biggest masterstroke I think of MGS is that they figured out how to make a game cinematic without making it into a movie. Like it was very cinematic in scope, but they never took away the player's involvement with that game.
Well, until what was it, MGS4, where it was just like hours and hours of cutscenes.
It's like, it was pretty bad,
and that's when I was officially out. I was like, I don't want to do that.
That's when I thought, like, hey, Hideo, go make movies now. Now you've had your training here in video games, and not that it's like a lesser art form. But maybe he's not interested in making games anymore. He wants to make movies.
Yeah.
But what he really wants to do is tell stories.
Yeah, which is great.
MGS is fucking amazing in that you felt the scope of the cinema in front of you, but you were the one playing the game.
Yeah.
You were the hero. And it never takes it out of your hands. It never feels like you're not Snake. It never feels like you're just watching things happen. Even if you think, like when that last boss battle happens and, Liquid drives up and he's like, it's not over yet. I was like, am I going to die here? Like, it kind of almost feels like, now looking back, it should be your victory lap, but it's not. Yeah. You can still die.
And even then, like, don't you crash and you're, like, kind of pinned and shit? You're like, oh my god, I'm going to die. What did I do wrong?
Is this the bad ending?
Is this the bad ending? It's because you saw me with ketchup, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I totally agree. That's a fantastic boss battle. My number one is... fighting Ruby Weapon in Final Fantasy VII. I picked this boss battle because it's nothing else. Like, so Ruby and Emerald Weapon were
you're gonna have to educate me.
Yeah,
sure.
They're one of, if not the first super bosses in the Final Fantasy franchise. So a lot of Final Fantasy games have these magnificent bosses that are completely optional. You do not have to fight them. They have no bearing on the game. They're just sort of on the outside of the story, like kind of ancillary, kind of like. So there are a bunch of weapons that awaken in Final Fantasy VII. There's some of them you have to fight and interact with, but Ruby and Emerald are two that go off into the world. One's underwater, Emerald, and Ruby is in the desert, and they're out there, for the poor souls who come across them in that world, but you don't have to fight them. And if you choose to, you have to do a lot of grinding, a lot of leveling, a lot of like specific quests and pick up specific items and spells and tactics in order to beat these guys. And these two, because Emerald is a male weapon and Ruby is a female weapon. But you have to go out of your way to do this. And I was so caught up in that game that I had to do it, and it felt like a big challenge. Like, that's awesome,
Yeah.
Challenge, but how the fuck am I going to beat this? So I did it all. Emerald, you would think, is harder because you're underwater. You have a 25-minute time limit. I believe it's 25 or 20 minutes. But Ruby is way harder. So when you first initiate the battle, one of the first things she'll do is suck away 2 of your 3 party members.
Oh, Jesus random. Christ.
Yeah. So if you have your party set up to fight her, you're not going to beat her, But if you have one person set up, which is what I ended up doing, I was like, all right, I'm just going to load everything onto one character and cross my fingers that she doesn't suck that one character out. Which, when I eventually beat her, I did. I threw it all on the character Sid, and Cloud and Vincent got sucked away right at the beginning. I was like, God damn it! But I also felt like, all right, it's on.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
You fell into my trap!
Yeah, you're right where I want you to be. And it felt like an experience. Like, it took me, I think they have over 1 million hit points.
Jesus Christ.
So it took a really long time. I think it took about an hour, maybe, to beat her. And
endurance trials.
Yeah, it's this long endurance trial, and it felt like it was set up to do that. And like, we both know the only reason you're doing this is to say you beat me. And I was like, and the only reason I'm doing it is because you're unbeatable. It kind of felt like a conversation. It's just me and
that
Ruby,
sounds fucking cool.
And that's it. I'm just sitting here, like making sure my spells and my big shield and everything is cast at the right time. And like, all it takes is one mistake in the pattern, and I'm fucked. But she has to be perfect forever, and she can't be perfect forever. You know what I mean? So it was just kind of like this
War of Attrition. It was just such an epic grind.
Oh my god, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, way more fun than Emerald Weapon. And this continued, like Final Fantasy VIII has Omega Weapon, and I ended up beating that boss, but it's not nearly as fun. I mean, yeah, it's a big giant super boss, but it wasn't as fun. It didn't feel as epic, and it's kind of, I felt like I wasted my time. I was like, oh, okay, I beat it, you know. And the other downside to beating Emerald and Ruby is that your characters are so powerful to withstand this monster that when you get to Sephiroth, he's a joke. Like,
oh shit!
So you get to the end of the game and you're like, oh, you break your party up into 3 parts and you fight, like, you know, these bizarro versions of Sephiroth, and it has different body parts and target areas, and same with Genova and stuff. But I was like, I just need these 3. Like, I just need these 3 guys. I have them lovely, and I know who my party is, and I'll just give them the right materia, and they're fucking done. There wasn't a monster that could stand against my party by the time I had beat Ruby Weapon. So,
damn.
So the end of the game was a lot of fun, and I love, it's such a big place in my heart. My video game heart is with Final Fantasy VII, but that final boss is fun. It's really exciting. The music is beautiful, but it was nothing after playing Ruby. So,
and unfortunately, I can't add too many comments to this because I don't know anything. I wasn't a big RPG player growing up, and Final Fantasy,
which is weird because you love The Legend of Zelda, which is an action adventure RPG.
Yeah. But that's just it. Give me the controls. Like, give me the, like, I don't want to take turns. Like, I just want and that's the way it's always been. Like, that's always been my biggest. I don't want to say complaint, but I guess my biggest complaint is, like, I don't want to take turns. I get the strategy and it sounds awesome, and I would love to watch people play it. But when it comes to me, I need the hack and slash aspect. And I know Zelda's not really hack and slash, but there's still a combat mechanic there that I'm controlling. You know what I mean? But it falls more in the line of I thrive more on stuff like DMC, Ninja Gaiden, God of War. You know, hack and slash. You know, rolling, moving, get the fuck out of the way. But when you talk about Final Fantasy VII, you and Eric, Albert, all of y'all, when all of y'all start talking about Final Fantasy, I always have that feeling that I missed out on something so badass. And I've seen some videos on it, and some of the fights look really cool. And I remember, I think I saw one like a year ago. I was just looking up, like, can you show me Final Fantasy VII fight? And show me Sephiroth. And then I would watch it, go, man, this would have blown my mind as a kid. Like, this would have been fucking awesome. But it's just something that I didn't really was able to get into. So it's unfortunate that I didn't get to miss that.
I've played a lot of hours of video games. I've played hours and hours of video games. But Final Fantasy VII was the first where I saw exactly how many hours I had played.
Because it tells you, right?
Yeah, it has a counter at the bottom. And I was at 99, 59, 59. And the 59, the second counter, just started blinking. By the time I was done playing that game, like the last time I had loaded it up, which was the standard for a little while, was just that 59 blinking but not moving. So it was like 99.
So you
59,
maxed the
59.
time out, like, to where it just stopped
counting.
Jesus Christ!
And I played that game so much. I fucking loved it. And it was one of those games that I would go back and I had different saves, so I could, you know, play different bosses or listen to different music. It was long before the convenience of Spotify and YouTube and stuff.
Oh, shit.
But yeah, I have that. I still have that memory card in my apartment that has, if you were to upload it, it has the desert rose that is the icon that you get for beating Ruby. It's basically just a trinket. It's just to say you beat this weapon. You can sell it for, it's like
before
it's almost
there
worthless.
was ever trophies, before there was ever the internet to where you could brag. Wow, that's impressive. So you'd have to bring people to your house, like, look at this.
Yeah, or I would bring my memory card to their place and plug it in and put in their
look at this.
Like, check it out.
Do you have a rose?
Right. It's in my inventory.
It's in my inventory. I have 2 roses.
But that is my all-time favorite boss battle, and that's my favorite boss. And even the design, she looked very serpentine and like deadly. You know, the other, I think it was a diamond weapon, didn't look nearly as cool. I think, and Emerald was really cool looking as well. I think Omega Weapon and 8 also looked really cool, but I think Ruby looked the best. It was very menacing monster, you know, and the red against the bleak brown of the desert was so much fun to look at, and
that does look pretty cool.
A lot of fun to play. And now if you watch any speedruns or whatever, they'll show you ways to beat Ruby in a couple of minutes, you know.
Right, just beat the shit out of it.
But that is my favorite boss of all time in video game history. Do you want to do a quick honorable mention? Do you have like just 1 or 2 that you can think off the top of your head?
Oh yeah, the Alma fight in Ninja Gaiden Black and Virgil fighting Devil May Cry 3, and Sigma and Mega Man X. Those three, fucking, those are great. But
a kind of a cop out is like I like the boss reap fights in Mega Man 2.
Oh
I
I love those. They were so cool. When
really,
the little ghost would come down,
that felt like a real thing, you know. It's like, oh shit, this is the end of the game. I have to fight all these idiots again, you know. But now with one life bar, and I could barely do it then. I'd have to do them all in a row. That was really cool. And there was a boss called I looked it up while we were talking because it almost slid in, called RoboCorpse from Contra 3. And it was the big robot.
Oh yeah,
that was really cool. And I've played.
It was like a giant Terminator.
Yeah, exactly.
Hated that motherfucker because then there were like two ones would hang and like they would fight those first.
But when he like. Just the sound effect of him opening the wall and so you remember the sound effects.
Hell yeah!
And almost anyone can get to the third level boss, you know. So I would get there, and that was the time that I would maybe lose interest, or I would have to go do something. But I really love that boss. It almost let in. It almost let in.
That's a good one. That's a damn good one. Donkey Kong Country. King K. Rool final fight. That was one of my favorites. It's not a hard fight. Mm-hmm. It's not really easy, but it's not hard. But the music
for Killer Instinct.
No, that's if we ever did a top 5 I fucking hate you bosses. Idol is on my list. Fuck Idol. I hate him. No, stop bringing your life back up, you cheap bastard.
Idol felt like a boss.
He did.
Like, no, I'm not going to be fair. Oh, you want this to be fair? That's not how this works.
Yeah, and by that regard, that he's one of my favorite bosses because you're exactly right. He is cheap. He's fast. Mm-hmm. Like I love, like you would
super fast.
Like I played a lot of Jago, and at moments I would get frustrated, and I would just do a fucking wind kick at him, which was the worst thing you do. He'd be like, and then you would just get knocked up into the air, fall down. He's like, and he's getting his life back, and you're like, dude, all that damage I did to you, got almost all of it back. Mm-hmm. Like you're so fucking lame. I hate you so much. And then but when you beat his ass, that shit feels so good.
Yeah. The first, when I would say that the Barons of Hell, when you fight them in Doom, that's kind of a boss battle. And they come out of nowhere, and you've seen already some horrifying things, but those are the most horrifying by that time. But those are probably, you know, some honorable mentions I could think of off the top of
Legion
my head.
From Castlevania 7.
Yeah.
I
don't know why they changed it to Granfalloon, which is a reference. Kurt Vonnegut reference, I think, but Legion.
Legion,
so
yeah.
Much fun.
Legion.
The first time you fight that thing and like all the
just bodies coming off, it's like, ugh, this is disgusting.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god, this like. Alucard says this castle is a creature of chaos, and it's like, oh, it's also part of hell, you know, like there's evil here.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, it's a Frankenstein. It's like, wait, this thing is just made of bodies. Like, oh my god, this is a floating ball of bodies.
That's a great boss. Legion is a really
Tyrant, good Resident Evil. Like
I was going to ask you if you.
It's only fun because the mechanics are so sluggish, and like you're driving an 18-wheeler of a character. That's the only reason that fight is so heart-pounding, you know. But because that's the way the game plays, that game is that tyrant battle, fighting the nemesis. All of those ones are badass because you're over here like trying to move quick when your guy is literally moving at like 90-degree angles while he's like dashing across the screen, but he only gets one good dash and then he walks, so you get a chance to shoot at him. That's pretty badass.
There's a character named Pyramid Head that's from the Silent Hill franchise. At the end of Silent Hill 2, before the final boss, you fight dual Pyramid Heads.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so the first time you think, how do I kill this thing? How do I defeat it? Then cut to the end of the game, like, how do I fight 2 of these motherfuckers?
I'm actually happy I didn't play that.
Yeah.
Dodged a bullet.
Right. But would you like to take us home?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you guys so much. You can shoot us an email at endoftheinternetpod@gmail.com. We do have a Twitter up at EOTI_podcast. Shoot us messages there. Send us love. Like, subscribe to the channel, of course. And then on Facebook, we have a page launch, End of the Internet Podcast. Look us up there. Join the page. And again, you can shoot us comments on any of those things. Send us love. Talk about the stuff that we're talking about. I would love to know people's top 5s. We haven't really got too much feedback on those things yet, but we would definitely love to hear those things. You know, video game memories, your fighting game stuff, or the times you were scared. I hear a lot of people love the horror one. So
a lot of people have to.
But yeah, those are the ways to reach us. So hit us up and show us some love. I was Marcus.
My name is Gonzalo, and this is the End of the Internet podcast. And you've reached the end of the episode. Have a good night, guys.
Peace.